Hello and welcome to another glorious episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. This episode is been one that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and it's been a really difficult one to arrange just from work commitments, time and all that, but I'm so glad we managed to do it. Today I am talking to Sharon Wilson in Texas. Sharon is, you may have heard of her work. She's been on many TV programs over the years with her work. She runs an organization called Oilfield Witness. And Sharon lives in Texas, and she understands from the inside and the outside the oil industry and its many and staggering failures in safety, in clean water. It's just, I won't say anything now because it is such an extraordinary amount of information that I learned from talking to her. She's such an extraordinary woman. She started methane hunting. She's often been dubbed the methane hunter in 2014 with a very special camera, which she will talk about, the optical gas imaging thermography, which can spot leaking methane from the literally, I'm not making up the number randomly, the literally millions of empty oil wells that have been drilled in Texas and are leaking methane now. It is an environmental disaster on catastrophic global proportions. And it's just normal. It's the oil industry behaving as they always have. They do not give a toss. But one of the things one of the things I want you to keep your ears out for is slap suits and anti-slap suits. These are things I've never heard of. And slap is, it's such a complicated thing. It is strategic lawsuits against public participation. Basically, it's corporations that can tell people to shut up if they're being critical about their work, and there's amazing anti-slap legislation in Texas that Sharon will explain. But she is an amazing woman who does an incredible job. She's clearly not going to stop. She's up against the biggest and the most powerful and the wealthiest industry on the planet, and they don't like it. And it's just fantastic what she's doing. When it comes to we're a responsible, clean oil company, and you hear anything positive coming out of the oil industry, it's 100% guaranteed lies. That is the point that I really want to make here before we go into more interesting discussions. But please welcome onto the Fully Charged Show podcast, Sharon Wilson from Oilfield Witness. So, Sharon, this is a thrill for me. I know we've had two struggles to get together to record this podcast. Can I just start very briefly? I've got one little thing to say before we start, which is about Spindletop in 1901, just to put it in perspective. So that's when I think the first really big oil well was started working in Texas, so well over 100 years ago, and how that completely transformed Texan society, which up to then I'm sure was 100% agrarian. It was agriculture, wasn't it? That would have been what was happening there, and that that really it was part of the process that changed the world that we live in. But coming up to the present day, we've learned a bit about extracting oil, the impact that has, what it's doing to the world we live in, and I'm very aware of its use in vehicles, when we burn it in a vehicle and all those, and when we use it to heat our homes and all those things. But what you're doing is going back to the source. So can you tell me your story of how you came to do what you're doing now?
The way that I got into this way back in 1996, June 19th, which is Juneteenth, the day we celebrate when Texas finally freed the slaves in 1865. That's June 19th, 1996. I moved onto 42 acres. That's the first night I spent there.
Right.
And I did not know at the time that 42 acres in Wise County was where George Mitchell was experimenting, trying to learn how to frack oil and gas from shale.
Wow. So at that stage, they hadn't actually done it. They were trying to do it.
The first well that actually produced and was successful was drilled on the border of the Denton County and Wise County line, and it was in 1997. So very shortly after I moved out there, things started expanding, and I started seeing these towers of lights off in the distance. And we enjoyed the night sky out there. You could see the Milky Way. So I was very
Yeah.
concerned about these towers of lights as they encroached. I drove to those towers during the day, and what I saw just blew my mind. I could
Right.
not believe what I was seeing. And I would sit on the side of the road in my pickup truck and, take pictures and take videos, but they tried to hide it, and they still try to
Right.
hide it. They would have a berm up or something. So I went home and got a ladder and set it up in the bed of my truck and climbed up on top of this ladder. And I'm terrified of heights.
Yeah.
And I just started witnessing what was happening out there, just couldn't believe it. I
Yeah.
started a blog. I started putting stuff on my blog. Other people found me. They said, it's happening here too. So that was the very beginning. I
Wow.
had a ringside seat to the beginning of the fracking boom. And if the fracking boom had not happened, we would have solar and wind everywhere by
Yeah.
now. But the fracking boom set all of that back.
Yeah. That is, yeah. It is
Eventually,
extraordinary.
eventually, as it started booming around me, my beautiful crystal clear sky and air turned brown,
Wow.
and my water turned black.
Oh, gosh. And your water was coming from a well,
Oh, well.
I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yeah, so that really, I went to a very dark place, because when you don't have water out in the country on a well,
Yeah.
you don't really have anything. It was It was horribly traumatic for me, for my young son who was living with me. But
Right.
eventually, our water did come back. It was awful at first, but it went completely away. We lost it. Then it
Wow.
came back black, and then it eventually started running clear, but we didn't drink it again after that. But
Yeah.
when I got out of this trauma and depression, I realized, and actually what pulled me out of it was realizing that people all over the place were going through the same thing. And maybe I couldn't help them in any other way but just to be there for them, because nobody was there for me. And it was a
Right.
very big paradigm shift, because I grew up in America believing that if a disaster happened, the Red Cross would come, the helicopter would come, they
Yeah.
would save the people on the sinking ship, that someone would come and everything would be okay. I was safe because I was an American. So it was
Yeah.
a huge paradigm shift in my life to go through that.
Yeah.
Because when it's oil and gas, no one comes. You're just a sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's happened in history, and it's also happened all over the world. I mean, the
Right.
stories of terrible environmental devastation from from Texas to Saudi Arabia to the Niger Delta to Kuwait to Iraq and Iran. The terrible state of the poor people that live near the wells and where they're burning off the fumes. So that is what is. I mean, in a sense, it's less shocking there because you imagine there's less regulation. And I would have assumed in the United States, there would be regulation that controls this. There would be environmental concerns. But it's clearly, from what you're saying, there was none.
There are words on paper that
Yeah.
they call regulations, but in the United States, we have never had a system of regulating the oil and gas industry. It
Right.
is a voluntary, a self-reporting system. So like if you have that second beer and drive home anyway, and as soon as you get home, you call the DPS and say, come give me a ticket, arrest me for driving while intoxicated. That's the reality of our regulatory system.
Right. Yeah.
And so the EPA have released new methane rules, and some people are very excited about this because environmental groups are saying this is going to capture 80% of the methane and blah blah blah. And I'm like, how
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
me what the system is that will turn this into reality, because there is none.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. So, but then, okay, so let's just go to the next step, because you knew this was happening. You knew from the impact it was having on your home and your children, your child, and everything like that. What was the? I'm just fascinated to know how you got from that point to where you were going. I'm gonna start hunting methane, because it's such an extraordinary story.
So my superpower is tenacity. And
Right,
I learned early on, I learned how to do open records requests to government agencies, ask them for documents. And during
right,
one of these requests, the TCEQ, which is the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality,
right.
they sent me all these videos. I did not ask for videos, but they sent me all these videos. And started watching the videos, and I would see a regular oil and gas site like you see with your bare eye. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it would change, and it looked like this black stuff was coming out everywhere, or
Mm.
smoke. And I was like, what is this? So I had to figure out what I was looking at. And when I figured that out, I went, this is a game changer for uh, communities, for families. People were contacting me, asking me for help. So eventually I went to work for an environmental organization, and I pestered them for 2 years with my tenacity. And after 2 years, uh, they developed a plan and started to fundraise to get a camera.
Right.
And when I got that camera, I was very lucky. I got to spend a lot of time. I did go to classes and get certified. I was the first non-governmental, non-industry person to get this certification.
Right.
And so I went out in the field and just started observing, trying to learn how to use the camera, because getting this certification does not teach you how to find methane.
Right.
But once you learn how to do it in Texas, there's no hunting involved.
Right. You just
They call me a methane hunter, but I don't have to hunt.
it's just there right in front of you. But can you explain about the camera? Because it's not an ordinary video camera. It's a very specialist camera.
Right. It's an optical gas imaging camera.
Right.
And it was made legal in 2006 by the EPA for the industry to use it to find their emissions from oil and
Right.
gas. And it makes visible the invisible pollution from oil and gas. And the way it does that is it has a filter that is tuned to the 3.2 to 3 micron range on the light spectrum, and that's in the infrared spectrum.
Right.
We see in the visible light spectrum, if you look at a light spectrum, you see the rainbow. That's where we see.
Yeah.
In the mid-range infrared section is where the camera is tuned, and
Right.
it's very narrowly tuned to pick up hydrocarbons. So
Right.
as these hydrocarbons escape from the equipment, they become opaque because they absorb infrared, and the camera visualizes them for us.
Right. So in a way, it's like a heat-sensitive camera, but it's actually a gas-sensitive camera. Would
It
that be
it
a
does
fair
it
description?
does detect heat, and when I first started using it, the industry just came after me in really
Right.
hard and heavy. She doesn't know what she's doing. That camera detects heat, blah blah blah. Despite the fact that they helped develop the technology and they used the same technology, they were coming after me, and I was new at it. At first, I would just cry, and I would
Right. Yeah.
stay up all night researching, trying to figure out, okay, what did I do wrong? And, I didn't do anything wrong. I was
Right.
right. And so the camera does detect heat, but it also detects the hydrocarbon gases. It detects particulate matter,
Right.
things like that. It will pick up steam and water vapor, and so people say that's just steam, that's water vapor. So I have to take a photo showing you don't see any steam or water vapor. So
Right.
that's not what it is. That's not what's happening. Besides, I don't need $130,000 piece of equipment to see steam.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So the camera is that expensive. It's a really expensive.
Yes, with
Yeah.
the telephoto lens. So we have to
Right.
have a telephoto lens made for the camera and calibrated for it, because I'll never be invited on the inside of a facility. I
Right.
have to be outside and sometimes a good distance away. So I always stay on public property. So I
Yeah.
have to have a telephoto lens.
Right.
And that is very expensive.
They're expensive, yeah, yeah. But then what is extraordinary? Well, the thing I've literally read today, and it was so bizarre because I wasn't even looking for it because I knew I was talking to you, is that Marathon Oil. There's a report come out about Marathon Oil, which I know is one of the companies in Texas that you've seen their methane leaking. But they had that was I didn't realize, but they were one of the main contributors to the report that was put together in the 1970s by the American Petroleum Association, American Petroleum, like whatever they are.
Institute. Yeah.
Yeah, about which was saying if we burn all this hydrocarbons for the next 40 years, it's going to affect the climate. And they all knew, and they did nothing about it. But Marathon Oil were a key company in that procedure. And the thing is, I don't know. I don't want to ask your age, but I remember the 1970s. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
No one told me then.
I graduated in 1970. I'm 71,
Right.
so, I would like to retire, but, how can
Yeah.
I face what we're facing? And I have a long history with Marathon. When
Right.
the very first time, even before I was certified, I borrowed a camera just to see what it was like. I went to the Eagle Ford Shale. I pointed it at this site, and immediately I put the camera down and I ran to my car because I thought, oh my God, there's so much, it's going to blow up.
Right.
And then I went, no, if it's going to blow up, you have to document it. I mean, all these things were going through my mind really fast. And it
Yeah.
just was this enormous cloud coming from this facility. It's a Marathon facility. Went
Right.
back the next day. The same thing was
Wow.
happening. Long story. The environmental agency wouldn't come because they said, you don't live there. We don't have to come.
Wow.
Like if the, if you witness a robbery and you're from out of town, the police don't come. I mean, it was
Yes.
ridiculous. But anyway, about 3 months later, a air chemist from Texas A&M contacted me and said, would you happen to know what happened on March 6th and 7th, right about in this area in the Eagle Ford Shale? And I went, yeah, here's the video.
Wow.
He did modeling and to show that those emissions traveled 22 miles. And
Yeah.
so I have been visiting that site in the Eagle Ford Shale and many other sites since March 6th, 2014.
Right.
And it's still polluting today.
Wow.
Today, it is still polluting. So, what I've learned from over 10 years of documenting pollution, and thank you, Marathon, for giving me a specific example,
Yeah.
is that no matter how many complaints I submit with video evidence, no matter how many complaints the neighbors make, even if the regulatory agency takes action, even if Marathon Petroleum installed the best available control technology, it does not stop the pollution.
Right.
So that experience helped me form my opinion. Now that it helped me learn why they can't keep it inside the pipes and the tanks and everything. And it helped me form an opinion that the only best available control technology that is reliable is to keep it in the ground,
Yeah.
because the problem is one of physics.
Yeah.
The industry doesn't really have a methane problem, they have a physics problem.
Yeah.
And the physics is they're trying to keep a volatile gas in steel.
Yeah.
And their physics problem causes methane to be released. And the methane is a problem for us with climate change.
Yeah. But I mean, what I find extraordinary about the whole thing is that's what, when people talk about natural gas, it's methane. That's what when that term means, which we do use. I'm not. I think we should stop using it, but we do. So the fact that there's that much leaking gives the idea that they really don't have to care. They're making so much money from extracting oil that the methane's just like, oh, just get rid of it. I mean, you'd think that they would want to capture that and sell it as a product, but
and I can talk a lot about that and
right, good.
what's happening in the Permian with the associated gas. But first, I want to talk about leaks, because
Yeah,
the problem is not leaks.
right,
Leaks are a problem, but the problem, leaks are only by analysis of industry's own data, what they admit. Leaks are only 6% of the methane that
right,
gets emitted in our atmosphere. The rest of it is intentional by design. Because it's a volatile gas, it will build up pressure inside the equipment. And if they don't release it, the equipment will explode.
yeah,
So, and then in the Permian right now, for the entire month of July, the average price was negative 8 cents per MMBTU.
wow,
So they can't make any money off of it.
right,
It has negative economic value.
wow,
So what are they going to do? They are profit driven, and they're not going to pay to have that gas taken away. They're just
yeah,
dumping it in the air or burning it.
yeah. So
And
when you see, I mean, I've seen that with my own eyes, distant oil fields in various places, huge flames at night, or and off sea on our North Sea oil. That's a very common sight. Is the big oil rig in the sea, and this massive flame that is then burning off the excess methane.
right. And that, if a flare is burning properly, rarely is one burning properly. But if it
Right.
is burning properly, that is much better than
Yeah.
them just releasing the gas. But
Right.
I rarely find a flare that's burning properly. And a lot of them are just unlit.
Right.
Back when people first started cluing in about the flares, I noticed a 34% increase in the flares that I observed out in the field. 34% were unlit.
Right.
It was a huge increase because, oh, well, you can see it from space, so I just won't
Yeah.
light it.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Yes. Yes. But I think, I mean, the other thing I would love you to explain is because, I think we had one or two experimental fracking wells in the UK 5-10 years ago, and they all stopped. I mean, one of them started causing local earthquakes in the region it was in, which was a heavily popular. We're a much smaller country with a big population, so there aren't big open spaces here. But it seemed to be a pretty uniform rejection of the technology from the government down to the individuals who live near it. But one of the things and therefore we don't really know about it. We know that you drill a hole and you pump liquid in, and that cracks the earth, and you get gas or oil out, and that's it. But it's how short-lived those holes that you drill are, because there's a staggering number of old wells in Texas, isn't there, that aren't used anymore? Is that, have I got that right?
Right. There are millions of abandoned. They don't really even know how many abandoned wells
Right.
there are all over the place, and they're creating a lot of problems in Texas. For every barrel of oil they produce 6 to 10 barrels of this toxic formation water. They call it
Wow.
produced water. It's just toxic water. Could be radioactivity, high heavy metals. It's super, super salty, so it'll just kill everything. Nothing will grow for decades if they spill
Yeah.
it. And so they've been re-injecting it, but they're running out of places to put it because it's bubbling up in all these old wells, and
Right.
it's causing earthquakes. And it's a huge mess.
Yeah.
It's a disaster
Yeah.
area in West Texas, and they're trying to keep it pretty hush hush. But if you just look in the news, Texas abandoned wells, they have a 74-acre lake out
Wow.
there that is this toxic formation water bubbling up from an old well, and the hydrogen sulfide gas, which is a deadly gas, is so high out there. It's many, many times over the federal state level. So it's just, it's a huge mess out there, huge mess. When you go to Midland, Texas and check in a hotel, and Midland, Texas is the big oil center, of Texas and the world right now. When you check into a hotel, they give you free bottled water and tell you you can't drink the water. So here's your bottled water, and if you need some more, come get more.
Wow.
I don't even know if they do that in underdeveloped countries. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure they don't. Yeah.
I do want to mention that I have been to the UK with the camera. Yeah.
All right.
And you have quite a few wells there, and you have the same problems that we have with the methane escaping. But what you have, people don't own the mineral rights, so they're not state. Crown owns those, I think is how you say it.
Yeah.
And so the people are not as invested. They're not going to get a lot of wealth from it. And so what I saw is the opposition in the UK is fierce. I mean, where the earthquakes were happening, I saw people building camps and camping out there for weeks, months at a time to protest.
To stop them. Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
so inspiring.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, the downside of that is we still burn fossil fuel here, and we ship it in from other countries where people, it's
right. And it was a big mistake when the Ukraine war happened to decide to build these LNG terminals that take many years to build, to import more of our dirty energy. What should have happened is we should have pitched in and everybody worked together to build you out the infrastructure for clean energy.
Yeah.
But actually, right now, last winter it wasn't as cold in Europe, and so they didn't need as much gas. So everywhere renewable energy is competing with the gas, and even in Texas, we have the largest build out of renewable energy in any other state.
Well, the wind farms in Texas are massive, aren't they? Huge
Right.
amount
And
of wind
solar
generation.
too. And in California, they just passed 100 days of having most of the day 100% renewable energy.
Wow. That's amazing, because it's a huge population in California. I mean, it's not a small. It's a big country, effectively, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, and Texas has actually more renewable energy than California, but the industry in Texas is gobbling up a lot of the electricity because ironically they figured out that electricity is cheaper to run their equipment than using. So they're building power stations everywhere, big electrical power stations, and they're using up a lot of the electricity that could be, going to people. And, with our grid is pretty crippled. And today I read that the wildfires we had last summer in the Panhandle, which burned up a lot of the Panhandle, killed a lot of cattle, just devastating.
Yeah.
Those were caused by unregulated oil and gas power lines.
Right. Wow.
Electrical power lines.
So they put them in themselves and not done it well.
I mean, it's just Wild West out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
wow.
You would. I've got some stories.
I'm sure. Yes. But then, so the other one, I think that I do remember people talking about here, and we're not. I'm just going to say now, we're not short of water in this country. Since I've been talking to you, we are now having a truly torrential downpour of rain. So I don't know if you can hear it, but is the amount of water that is used in fracking, which is just, I mean, every time I hear it, I think that can't be right. That is just crazy. I mean, the amount of water that is.
We don't even know how much they're using because they don't have to tell us. There again, it is self-reported. So they report how much water they've used, unless it comes from a metered source. We don't know, but
Right.
it's trillions of gallons.
Right.
The problem with the water that the fracking industry uses, you cannot compare that water use to uh, agricultural use, to municipal use, because after they use that water, it's
It's
unusable.
dead.
They
Yeah.
have to they actually throw water away
Yeah.
into deep injection wells where it will not be available for human use in human time frame.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the hubris in that is stunning. I
Yeah.
mean, we had this beautiful planet with this system. It's my dog shaking.
All right.
We had this beautiful planet with this system and all the water we needed.
Yeah.
And it is a permanent withdrawal from the active hydrologic cycle.
Right. Right. Because I mean, I think the other thing that I think you've said, which I think is very pertinent, is that, here we're sold the idea that gas is a good transition fuel from coal, because we now burn no coal in the UK at all. We don't, but our last coal plant closed a couple of years ago. So and yet people here will still say your electric car is powered by coal. And you have to go, well,
Yeah.
not here. It isn't. But anyway, that aside, from the overall damage that shale gas does, and fracking does, I'm not buying that gas is cleaner than coal. I mean, I don't think coal is good. I don't want to start burning coal again, but it sounds, I mean, the intensity of the damage that is caused by fracking
No,
you can't exaggerate it, can you? It's just, it's
no,
terrifying.
it's the worst idea humans ever had. But we have known since
Yeah.
2011 that shale gas is actually worse for climate than coal. But
Right.
when that was the Bob Howarth, Anthony Ingraffia study, Cornell
Yeah.
professors, and they released this study, and they used very conservative figures,
Right.
and they were just, I mean, blasted by the industry,
Yeah.
even other environmental organizations
Right.
just came out and said just horrible things about them. It
Right.
cost them money, funding, and it was brutal how they were attacked. But guess what? It's turned out that study was conservative. It was their
Right.
figures were conservative. Since 2011, they have been affirmed over and over and over again that they are correct, that because all the methane that's escaping, uh, gas is worse for climate than coal. Not
Right.
not a fan of coal either. Let's just we don't
Yeah. Yeah. No,
the fact is we have everything we need to power our meet our energy needs with clean renewable energy. We don't
yeah.
need any of that. We may need it for plastic or whatever,
Yes.
pharmaceuticals. We
Yeah.
they're even developing ways that we can don't need it for fertilizer.
Right.
So we need to stop drilling new wells and start contracting. But in
Yeah.
the Permian, they're just drilling like mad. I mean,
Are they still drilling now? I
oh,
mean, they're still drilling new wells today, for instance.
it's like a contagion. I
Wow.
mean, the last time we were there, we stopped and took a video at this one place with six. We lined it up, six drilling rigs, right in
Wow.
one, just in maybe a half mile area. Just crazy.
Yeah. And can you explain, this presumably is on land that's owned by well, I mean, it might be owned by a corporation or something, but it's often owned presumably by farmers or
It's
by people
private,
who,
private
private land.
land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Do they get compensation then, presumably, from allowing
Right.
it?
They sign a lease, and some of
Right.
these leases date back to the 1920s. And so the
Wow.
land has changed generations. And this one rancher, he inherited this ranch and a couple of other ranches, and it's beautiful, arid land. And he's just got the biggest mess of oil and
Right.
gas on there. And his I don't know, is in 1928 is when the lease was signed.
Right.
And it's held by production, which he'll never get out of that lease.
Right.
They just keep drilling, and they throw trash. He's got a vehicle that the oil and gas industry abandoned. Oxy Petroleum, who, they're a big company, they
Right.
have made the biggest mess on his property and leaking
Right.
wells. There's oil spills everywhere. It's just, and he's
Right.
got some of these places where the abandoned wells, the water is bubbling up and it's created a big lake, and
Right. Oh God.
it's a mess.
Yeah, and these now are abandoned wells. They're not still using them. So this is the thing I think we don't know in this country is the amount of abandoned wells. They've done some drilling, they've got a bit of oil out, then they've just left it. And
Right. And on his ranch is some of both new wells and wells that they've abandoned. And
right,
what they do typically is that they just declare bankruptcy. And a
right,
big company like Mobile, like Oxy, they what they do is they sell their assets to a smaller company. The smaller company just, gets the last little bit of oil they can out, and then they declare bankruptcy.
right,
And there have been some fraudulent conveyances where, there was some sketchy stuff about how these wells were sold and how the conveyance went down, and that's being looked at by um, the federal government.
right,
So, it's they never did intend to clean up their mess.
right,
But the problem is right now, like in California, they have such a big mess. And if you look at all the oil and gas operators operating in California and the assets that they have now, there's not enough money to clean up the
to
mess.
clean up the mess. Wow.
There will
Yeah.
there will never be enough money in California to clean up the mess.
Right.
So they're going to have to get profits from somewhere else, or the taxpayers will have to clean it up.
Yeah.
And it's trillions of dollars in tax money if we have to clean up all of this mess. And then, you can't guess what? Guess what we've learned? Concrete doesn't last forever. Cement
Yes.
doesn't last forever. So they have to keep replugging these wells. So
Right.
on one ranch in West Texas, wells that have been plugged, even wells that have been plugged by the state agency, fail after a few years and have to be
Right.
replugged. And
Wow.
some of them may be there for a few decades, but then they eventually have to be replugged. They're leaking everywhere. It's a disaster.
Right. It is. It is very, very sobering. I think that was the thing. But what I'm intrigued is, so once you, sort of two sides of it. One is, did you get positive media attention once you started to release these images of, I mean, whether like local TV stations or radio stations? Because I'm imagining you're working in not a hostile environment, but an environment that is very oil focused. You're in a state that is known globally for being, beef and oil. Those are the two things I
Right.
immediately think of with Texas. What is it? Beef and it's oil.
Um, Before I answer that, my dog are you picking up the noise she's making?
No, I'm not. But I can't. Oh, I see. There's a jingling noise. It's lovely. It's
Yeah.
not a problem
I can
because
put
the
her
rain is so heavy here. I can't really hear it.
I can put her in the bedroom if you think it's going to be a
Don't.
problem. Okay.
She'll be very popular to have a dog on the show.
Yeah.
With our listeners, they won't mind.
Yeah. I mean, she's not happy because she's going to have to wear shoes because now the pavement gets so hot it's burning her feet.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. So actually, quickly tell me what is the temperature today in Texas, or what's it going to reach?
It's going to be 103, which is not as bad as it is sometimes.
Right.
But I want to get back to your question, which was,
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
So when I first started using the camera and showing these
Yeah.
images, the industry ganged up on me like you cannot believe, and they would
Okay,
come
yeah.
after me. They would everything. They would look up personal information, and it was brutal. But
Right.
I'm tenacious, so I just have to make sure that everything I do is right.
Yeah.
That I am so much better at it than they are. But I did have to defend myself from two different slap suits. and
Right.
that's strategic litigation against public participation.
Wow.
So a $1 billion company accused me of conspiracy to defame them. And conspiracy is a very big charge.
Yeah.
So that was pretty scary, but
Can you tell me once more what SLAP stands for? That's amazing. I've not heard of that before. So,
strategic legislation against public participation.
wow.
And
Wow.
I've been in a peer reviewed study from, I mean, it's because I've been slapped
Wow.
twice by the oil and gas industry. The first time was a $1 billion company, Range Resources, and that was very terrifying, I but I got a really great lawyer who said they want you to shut up. Most
Right.
lawyers would gag you and not let you talk anymore.
Yeah.
I want you to keep going. They want
Brilliant.
you to shut up, so I want you to keep going. You can be a sassy, you can be sarcastic. Just make sure that what you say is right and don't say
Yeah.
anything about the judge. So when I look back now at the sassy posts that I put on my blog about them, it's level 2 fun because I just laugh about it.
Right.
So it wasn't fun when it was happening, but looking back on it, it's kind of fun because,
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't get anywhere with that. And then the second one was a man who was defrauding. He was just a fraud, and I knew he was a fraud. And I tried to alert the public to that. He sued me. The judge threw it out, and he's in federal prison now. So
Wow. Wow.
for fraud,
Wow. That is extraordinary.
yeah.
Wow. That is such an extraordinary, but just the name of that law tells you corporations have all the power and they can change the law in the
Yeah,
way that they see fit.
in Texas, we do have a pretty good slap protection.
Right. Right.
So yeah, but now I don't know if you know it, but Greenpeace has a $300 million slap suit on them, and it's
Wow.
energy transfer. Do you remember the Standing Rock fight where the
Yes.
Native Americans in North Dakota?
Yeah.
Okay, energy
This is
transfer.
for the pipeline, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was an energy transfer pipeline,
Right.
and Kelsey Warren owns Energy Transfer, and he's a billionaire. He lives here in Dallas, but they're suing Greenpeace for $300 million, claiming that they started that they put the Native Americans up to that. And I
Right.
don't know if you know very many Native Americans, but you cannot. They're done with being manipulated by
Yeah.
white people.
I think you're right. The ones I've met, I did not get the impression they go, "Oh yeah, we'll do whatever you say."
There's no way
No.
that Greenpeace orchestrated that, but still they are having to fight that
Wow.
lawsuit.
Wow, that is incredible. But then, so can you tell me about Oilfield Witness then? So that's the organization you set up to kind of focus attention on what you were doing. Because I mean, the other thing I did ask is about, I can imagine the negative side, but have you had a positive response from like big media companies, big TV, I don't know, big TV news stations? Have they?
Oh yeah, I've been on.
Yeah,
I'm BBC. The Big Oil versus the World is a 3-part documentary with the BBC.
right.
Many times, journalists have flown over from Europe to do news with me.
To
Sky
see what you're doing.
News,
Yeah,
BBC. I don't know, several, and I've had a lot of media, but
right.
it's hard to get it through to the public.
Yeah,
So right now, what we're trying to figure out is how we can get this in front of the public, who a lot of people don't watch the news anymore.
yeah,
They get their news online. And so how can we compete with all the other noise to let them see, hey, this is, this is a huge problem. And
yeah,
a lot of people go, oh, we have satellites now. Phew, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
yeah.
Satellites monitor, they watch methane from the sky. They don't stop methane. It
No,
hasn't happened yet. One site in the Permian has shown up on the UN satellite 29 times in 11 months. It's one
right.
of the biggest emitters that they've observed. They're
Wow.
just observing it. I
Yeah,
went I went out and I observed it and went, wow, just look,
right.
it's just like this volcano
Wow.
erupting of methane.
Yeah.
until somebody stops some methane, it's like everybody who is an inventor, who is an engineer, they want to jump in on the methane problem, but they want to make money
Yeah.
doing it. I'm not really making money. I have to
No,
go to funders and get a salary, which, but
not easy.
I'm not making money trying to stop methane. I'm trying to stop it because I have children and I love animals, and it's a beautiful blue marble, and I want
I
it
want to
to
keep it. Yeah.
keep, yeah.
I mean, it is such a huge battle, and I mean, it's the thing that I'm talking about a lot in this country is that I don't underestimate the challenge of the human race, and it's literally reducing the amount of fossil fuels we burn. That's as far as you can go, but we could reduce it a lot, and the
A
technology exists
lot.
now to let us really reduce it enormously. But the counter to that is the people who are making so much money from selling it are fighting back, and you've witnessed that. I've witnessed that.
It's
They
just
don't.
a few people, though. It's not,
Yeah,
it's just a few people. What's happening is they are polluting our system of government with
yeah,
their profits.
yeah,
And so I am looking forward to the day when we have some elected officials who will listen to the people and do this really rapid transition to renewable energy. And then we have clean air. Because you know what? I can, if it is cold, I can go down and get in my electric car with the garage door shut and run that car and
yes,
warm up and charge my phone, and I don't die. And
and you don't die.
I
Yeah,
was arguing with a guy on Twitter who drives a diesel, and I said, when you can do that,
yeah,
so why don't I do this and why don't you do that and see if you
yeah,
survive to get back to me?
yes. I use that same argument. Yeah,
Yeah.
run your diesel in an enclosed space for an hour and then come and chat. Yeah, let's talk
Right.
about it.
And if the power goes out in the summer, you can run an electric car for a long time with just
Yeah,
the air conditioner on,
yeah,
a long time.
yeah. Well, all those technologies, and the technology to take the power from the vehicle and into your house, I've got one here. I mean, it already works. It's
Yeah.
still exotic, but it will become common. I think that stuff will, and I think when people see that they go, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that." Those things are very important. I'm
But
just going
they
to
have
check.
to see it. They have to see it, which is why
Yes,
what you're doing is so important, because there's so much noise, and
yeah,
the oil and gas industry has endless dollars to
yeah,
pollute the airwaves, pollute our
yeah,
government, you know, so it just takes a lot of what we're doing.
yeah, yeah. But then, because I've only been to Texas once, we did a show in Austin a few years ago, and it was great, the reception was amazing. And I mean, I then went, wow, Austin is amazing. I do realize that Austin is a sort of a little town, not a little town, but it's different to the rest of
Right.
Texas. So
Well, no,
that's the only bit of Texas I've really seen.
Dallas is actually bluer than Austin.
Right, right,
Dallas votes like 70% blue,
right.
Democrat.
Yeah,
Austin, San Antonio. I mean, all of the big metropolitan areas in Texas are blue, but
yeah,
it's the rural areas that are killing us.
yeah, yeah. And there's no one's fracking in a park in downtown Austin, are they? They're doing it out in the
Right,
rural areas. I mean, that's
right.
where, yeah. I mean, the other confusing thing for us in this country is, for us, blue is conservative. Is our Conservative Party, their color is blue, and the Labour Party is red. So it's completely flipped round the other way.
Wow. So the Labor Party is the Liberal Party. Yeah,
Yes, the sort of more, yeah, left leaning. Is
yeah,
that's who's just won the election here? So we've just had
yeah.
a big change of
Yay.
government. Yeah.
Good for y'all.
Yes, which yes,
Very
I'm
exciting.
yeah, I'm meant to be non-partisan, but secretly, yay! Well, we
Yeah,
had 14 years of it wasn't that you can have whatever political opinion, but they weren't very good at their job. They weren't. No, they weren't. They were really bad at their job. They
right.
really stuffed up. They just weren't. They were useless, and a lot of them were criminals. And and con artists and fraudsters, really bad bunch of people. So we've now got quite boring politicians that are actually doing the job that politicians should do. I don't want them to be interesting.
Well, I hope that we will get there. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same here. We've had a long stretch of way too much conservative influence,
Yeah.
especially in Texas.
Yes.
But
because is this what I don't know, the state government is, I mean, who well, I probably have heard of them. I'm trying to think who
Greg Abbott is our governor. I'm sure you've
I've
heard of him with all the border mess, which the border, the Conservative Party doesn't want to fix the border problem, because then they don't have anything to create division about, and so there have been some nonpartisan bills that could have been passed in Congress, but the conservatives won't vote for it.
Right.
Some do, but they can't get enough to vote for it to really put it in place.
And there's a question that I hadn't thought of asking, but because I know the Permian Basin is in Texas, but is there fracking on the other side of the border? Is there fracking in Mexico? I have no idea.
The Permian Basin extends into Mexico.
Right.
And Mexico has, the Democrats are in charge, but they really like the money that oil and gas brings in. So they passed some really beautiful rules that oil and gas has to operate under, but they won't fund the industry that needs to enforce those rules.
Right.
So they can't enforce them.
Yeah. Right. That is, Sharon, this has been amazing to talk to you. And I mean, if you have any other specific point you really want to make, I mean, we'll certainly put all the links to the work you do in the show notes of this. But I mean, I'm so grateful we finally managed to record this. It's been
this has been great, and I could go on and talk forever. I could talk about how the oil and gas industry is killing their workers, and you could just
mention that.
This forever. The workers, I know a man right now who is dying from exposure he got. They have to go up. You see these tanks that are meant to hold liquids, and the gas builds up in them. Well, they have to go take samples, and they have to figure out the level in the tanks. So they have to open this hatch, and when they open the hatch, the gas blasts out in their face, and it knocked him down. He would be dead today if it weren't for his trainee pulled him out of harm's way.
Wow.
Now his trainee is getting very sick.
Wow.
But there have been at least 20 men die from that, and Jeff will be the next one to die from that.
Right.
And there's an alternative method to doing it that way. I mean, they can use a cheap infrared camera. They can put a portal down low for them to get their samples, but the industry just doesn't, they won't do that. They will not do anything, even if it protects their workers and
their own workers'
lives. They're not going to do anything willingly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, there's so much about the industry that, and I worked for the industry for 12 years.
That's right. So I wanted to mention that. Yes, that slipped my mind. So you actually worked in the oil and gas industry?
Yes, I worked in the oil and gas industry, but I worked in an office, and I just juggled data. So I didn't know about the environmental impact until I moved out in the middle of it. But what I did know is that they had this disturbing sense of entitlement. If I thought of this idea, I get to profit. I deserve to profit. No matter if it hurts someone else, I deserve to profit because I thought of this idea.
Right.
And that is just prevalent throughout the industry.
Yeah.
And, I just learned some things about their ethics were so, mine's up here, and there was just a huge gap, and I couldn't spend my days doing that, despite the fact that they pay employees a lot of money, and that money is, for your silence. But I wasn't going to do that. So.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's such an enormous challenge. I mean, do you feel that in the 10 years you've been doing this, you've made a dent in this huge machine that is the oil industry? Has it kind of gone, oh, all right, we'll change a bit, or are they still like not changing at all?
Well, I've been at this since probably the early 2000s, but I've only had a camera in my hand doing it for the last over 10 years.
Yeah.
But I have made a dent. I'm the methane hunter, and I'm known far and wide for that. You know, the Bloomberg gave me that title, and then a German documentary also gave me that title. So I just embraced it.
Yeah.
But I think that methane, it has become a known topic because of the work that the two Cornell professors did, Bob Howarth and Tony Ingraffia, and they both say, and you, Sharon, you.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think
well,
I know I am making a difference, but it's not enough yet. It's not enough.
No. But I mean, I think everyone that sees or hears this is going to be amazed and impressed with what you've done. I mean, I can't, I don't want to use the, a bad term, but I just think what you've done is incredible. It caught as soon as I'd heard about it. And I don't know why I wasn't aware of what you've been doing for longer, but as soon as I went, this is incredible achievement and an incredibly important thing to do. And also what you do, and I think I've spoken to one or two doctors in this area as well about, where you go, I'm sure this air pollution isn't good for me. I can smell this diesel.
Right.
Then you talk to a doctor who have dealt with people who've died as a result of it. So they're not basing it on a theory. They're basing it on hard, real practice, real experience. And the thing you've done is I've sort of thought, I bet there's some side effects to fracking that we don't know about. And you've gone, yes, there are. And this is what
and
what
I've
they are.
experienced a lot of them, because I get sick when I go out in the field. And my colleague and I, who goes, he generally gets nauseous. I get my eyes burn. I get a headache. I get respiratory issues. He gets that too. So, we just try to stay out of it.
Yeah.
I do have a camera. I can see where it is and we can leave.
You can avoid it a bit. But I mean, the thing is, you've gone out into the wilds, into the open country, and you get ill, which is terrible. You should go out into the country and you feel better.
Right. And
it's terrible.
And if you could see what they've done, if you could see a before picture of West Texas with the cantaloupe and oh my God. And what it looks like now, it looks like a scene out of Dune. The movie Dune. It's just, or Mad Max. It's just unbelievable.
Wasteland. Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so, I'm trying to end on a happy note, but I think we have to end there because it's a very sad note. But Sharon, I just really love what you do. I want everyone to go and, I will really push the links and we'll push what you're doing. I mean, is the oil field witness site the best way of people seeing what you're doing? Is that
that site, the oil field witness site? We have an oil field witness YouTube channel. We're just getting started with all of this. We've been doing oil field witness about a year now, and my social media, Twitter. I'm TX Sharon on Twitter, and then of course LinkedIn, and I'm on TikTok. I mean, old dogs learning new tricks.
Yeah. We've got to learn this. I'm impressed that you're on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I'm very impressed. That's amazing. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, we have to wind it up there, Sharon, but thank you so much. This has been a real just an extraordinary thing to learn what you've been doing and to, just want to congratulate you and keep at it.
Thank you for having me.
A lot of people around the world appreciate what you're doing. I think it's important.
Well, I just hope we get to where we can, I hope we can end methane so that we can have a long lineage of humans.
Well, I think you'll agree with me. That was a very interesting episode of this wonderful podcast. Please do tell your friends and your brothers, sisters, cousins, aunties, mothers, fathers, and distant weird relatives that you try and avoid at Christmas about the Fully Charged Show podcast, and also about the Fully Charged Show and Everything Electric channel. And please do subscribe if you haven't already, because we have, as you can tell, amazing people on this show. And that's it. As always, if you have been, thank you for watching and listening.